I'm going to start with Lael. And Lael and her partner Nick Carmen, right over here. And they're exciting. They're exciting. There's just no other word for it. In two ways. One, Lael, and she may mention this, I don't know what she's going to say, but she has become one of the most phenomenal racers in biking right now. She obliterated the time record for the Tour Divide, which is a self-contained, self-supported ride on our Great Divide mountain bike route, where about 150 people start in Banff and ride to the New Mexico-Mexico border. No support allowed. It's on the honor system. She obliterated the women's record last year. Then this year, she said, what the heck, I'll try road cycling. And there's a similar race, self-contained, on the Trans Am, going west to east. She did that. She not only obliterated the women's record, she won the whole damn race, men or women. She did the ride. She did the ride. Now I know on our tours we do it. Are any Trans Am riders here? Yes. So it usually takes them 2, 3, 4, 5 months. She did it in 18 days. She averaged 235 miles a day. Yeah. Yeah, and she finished with a smile. So, but beyond that, that's the first reason. The second reason is she and Nick have traveled all over the world. They did a presentation to a packed house on Thursday night over at Free Cycles, our bike co-op. And we had over 200 people packed into a hot, sweaty room, and they all stayed. Nick showed their new Baja Divide route that they're going to release in about a month. So you can find this online soon. But it was so much fun to see this, and the best part of all was when my daughter Samantha met Lael, and she also met Martina Swift. I don't know if Martina's here. Are you here, Martina? I don't see her, but my daughter goes, and she goes, you are two amazing women, and the sparks were going. It was just so phenomenal to see this empowerment, this excitement, and I think that's what Lael and Nick bring to this. So I want to introduce Lael Wilcox.
Thanks for the introduction, Jim. I'm really happy to be here. Nick gave me a red bicycle 10 years ago. We were living in Tacoma, Washington. He had recently dropped out of college and begun working on bikes in his spare time. I was finishing my last year of school. We just met, and when I asked for a bike, he pulled out an old red mountain bike out of the attic, a bike which belonged to no one and had come with the house. He put air in the tires and gave it to me. The left crank was bent and the brakes didn't work. I regularly rode to class in the morning with one hand on the bars, a ceramic coffee mug in the other. I dragged a foot on the ground to stop. In time, Nick became a better bike mechanic. And I became a better rider. He gave me an old Motobican road bike, a single speed, which I rode to work in downtown Tacoma every day and back up the hill every night. The next year, Nick bought me a brand new Rally fixed gear bike. I think it was the first bike I ever owned, the first new bike. We rode everywhere in Tacoma together, to work, to school, to Point Defiance Park to go swimming, and across the Tacoma Narrows Bridge to Gig Harbor. In the spring of my senior year, both my sisters were in Seattle for the weekend, but we didn't have bus fare from Tacoma to Seattle. The bus was only $3 per person, and we didn't have any money. Nick and I mapped a route on Google Maps from Tacoma to my sister's house in Seattle, about 50 miles in total, and left town on our first long ride. Entering Seattle from the south, past the Boeing airfield, past rows of abandoned and repurposed industrial structures, And about 35 miles into the ride, I thought, we could ride across the country. I figured that if we could ride 30 to 40 miles a day, we could ride from town to town, from state to state, and across the country. On that ride to Seattle, our first ride over 30 miles, we planned to ride across the country that summer. But that didn't happen. Again, we didn't have any money. So we worked all summer and flew to Boston to visit Nick's sister in the fall. Riding secondhand road bikes, we rode north into Quebec, along valleys of radiant red maple leaves, south through New York, Pennsylvania, Maryland, West Virginia, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, then down the coast through Georgia and Florida, all the way to Key West. Following several months of work in Key West, where we both worked as pedicab drivers, driving tricycles for taxi, driving tricycles for money in the tropics, we pedaled out of town that spring. And the pattern of working and riding had been established. And for the past 8 years, we spent more than half of each year traveling the world by bike. In that time, we've lived and worked in different places, ranging from Albuquerque to France, and most recently, Anchorage, Alaska, where I grew up. For the rest of the year, we've traveled around the United States, down the Great Divide, across Europe to Ukraine and south to Albania and Greece, into Mexico to develop the Baja Divide route, across South Africa, Lesotho, and Swaziland, and through the Middle East, riding through parts of Egypt, Israel, Palestine, and Jordan. And during one of those trips last spring, I signed up for a bikepacking race across Israel called the Holy Land Challenge. It was an 850-mile mountain bike race, all by myself. And I did pretty well, and I had a lot of fun. And I decided I liked this racing thing. So last summer, returning from 10 months of touring in 18 countries, I decided to jump into the deep end of this kind of racing. Arriving from Tel Aviv, I built a new bike in Alaska and left a week later to start the Tour Divide race from riding from my home to Banff, Alberta. The Tour Divide is a grassroots self-supported race along the Great Divide mountain bike route. The gun goes off, the clock starts, and over 150 wide-eyed cyclists begin racing to the Mexican border, 2,750 miles away. Even if you don't consider yourself a fan of bike racing, and I'd never followed the Tour de France or entered a proper bike race before, the basic concept of the race is captivating. Riders sleep in the dirt, tend to their bikes and bodies, and ride as fast and as far as they can. I finished well, despite some debilitating breathing issues in Montana, which forced a 3-hour hospital visit in Helena during the race. When I returned to Alaska after the race, I'd stay awake at night thinking that I could do better. So a month later, I repacked my bags and rode back down to Banff. This time, I was the only one at the start line. After 15 and a half days, I finished at the Mexican border, nearly 2 days faster than my previous ride. But the ride was over. The bittersweet satisfaction of finishing a 2,750-mile race in record time had left by the time I tucked in for the night at a friend's house in Silver City. And the next day I wasn't racing. I was just a biker, or a cyclist, or a girl on a bike. But elements of our ride stay with us after the ride ends. Over 40 years ago, Greg and June Seipel and Dan and Liz Burton rode from Alaska to Argentina. Returning from their 2-year journey, they organized the Bicentennial Ride, the foundation of bicycle touring in America. And this continues with us as we ride. I recently passed through a small town in coastal Connecticut, in a region known to some as Nutmeg Country. There, I met a young man named Jonathan Benedict Wheeler, better known to many as Poppy, Juan Cool, or simply Ultra Romance. I was greeted by a kind, healthy, and shirtless young man with a great passion for bicycles. He's traveled in search of the finest country roads and the best yogurt. And in the year 2016, he reminds us of the simple pleasures of bicycle travel. He has recently moved to his hometown in Connecticut. His rides seem spontaneous, unplanned, and fun, where even a shirt and shoes are not required equipment. I was led to a seaside meeting place where a group of cyclists, similarly healthy, happy, and tattooed, meet weekly for a mixed terrain ride through the nearby countryside to an exquisite pizza eatery several towns away. In a town without a bike shop, this is the local club ride, and Mr. Romance is the ringleader, putting more people on bikes every week. I recently passed through the small town of Newton, Kansas. There, James and Heather Behringer are growing their small bike shop into one of the most memorable stops on the Transamerica Trail. At the Newton Bike Shop, they're developing a hostel for passing cyclists with a wide range of features to expand upon the informal hospitality they have provided in the past. Aside from supporting Trans Am tourists and a couple dozen Trans Am racers in June, they serve the local community every day and aim, as they say in their own words, to put more people on bikes as often as they can within any budget. In a time when many rural American communities are losing small businesses, especially local bike shops, James and Heather are doing more than keeping the doors open. They are building a place that we talk about long after we leave, and doing well to put more people on bikes. I recently partnered with a new kind of bike company called Advocate Cycles. After many years designing bikes for another company, Tim Kruger decided to strike out on his own to develop a line of steel and titanium bikes to his exact vision. One of their first models, the Steel 27.5 Plus Hayduke, is a mountain bike made for backcountry adventures and was especially suited to the kind of riding we encountered in Baja California, Mexico, while developing the 2,000-mile Baja Divide route this winter. What really sets Advocate Cycles apart is Tim's mission to donate 100% of the profits to organizations which support cycling, including IMBA, People for Bikes, and the Adventure Cycling Association. I liked riding the Hayduke, and when a bike's purchase supports advocacy organizations that matter, everyone wins. More people on more bikes. This spring, I spent 2 months in my hometown of Anchorage, Alaska, following 3 months of riding and research to develop the Baja Divide route in Mexico, and before my ride down to the start of the Trans Am bike race from Alaska, I worked at the bicycle shop. We are the oldest bike shop in Alaska and have served the diverse community of Anchorage for over 50 years. We're the shop that is willing to service old bikes, department store bikes, and 5,000-mile-a-year commuters. We sell more kids' bikes and entry-level bikes than anyone else in town. But it was in a conversation with my mom, a third-grade teacher at a Title I school, that I realized some of the most important people in my community were missing some of the opportunities we take for granted. Less than half of her students raised a hand when asked if they owned a bike, and several kids didn't even know how to ride a bike. I suspect most of us here tonight have great memories of our first bicycle and the time our parents gave us our final push and set us free. So my mom and I made a plan. We agreed to put both third-grade classes at Rush and Jack Elementary on bikes before school let out for the summer. We enlisted the help of my friend Kate at the local bike co-op off the chain, where a dozen kids' bikes were taking up space. We asked for additional bike donations from friends and the local community. We asked friends from local bike shops and from off the chain to volunteer their time to refurbish 30 bikes. After many late nights fixing flats and truing wheels, adjusting brakes, and checking and double checking that the bikes were safe and ready to ride, we invited the students who already had bikes to bring them to the co-op so we could make them ready. And then we brought all the students to the co-op to see the space and learn how to fix their own bikes and how they could volunteer their time for others. The following week, 50 bikes were lined up outside the back door at the Russian Jack Elementary School, along with 50 helmets and 50 kid-sized bike locks. With the help of a dozen volunteers on that day, we instructed new riders on basic maintenance, fitting a bike helmet, and safe riding. By the end of the afternoon, nearly 50 third graders were riding bicycles in an empty parking lot next to the high school I attended over 10 years ago. It was a great day for me, for my mom, and most of all for the kids in her class. They were so excited. If half of those kids in Anchorage ride those bikes sometime this summer, or decide that they want to ride to school next year, or that they want to go on a bike trip sometime in their life, I'd be really, really excited. Sometimes when our own rides end, we find other ways to keep the spirit of those experiences alive. Traveling by bike encourages change in all of us. We can use that energy to become agents of change in our own communities. And after all these years, I finally rode my bike across the country. Thank you.